Could you find comfort in the confined space of an elevator, or would the looming silence turn it into a chamber of dread? For many, elevators are mere conduits between floors, but for others, they are portals to the unknown, doorways to the inexplicable. In this collection of unsettling tales, three ordinary lives intersect with the sinister and the surreal, transforming everyday encounters into chilling narratives that make one question their faith in modern convenience. Take, for instance, Ryan, a night security guard in downtown Chicago. His job was typically uneventful, a monotonous cycle of monitoring screens and checking locks. But one fateful night in 2018, as he settled into his shift, a sense of unease began to creep over him, as if the very walls of the corporate building were whispering secrets. All was quiet until a call crackled through the intercom. An engineer named Greg, working late on the 9th floor, needed assistance. Ryan's brow furrowed. He was certain the building was deserted. As he made his way up to the 9th floor, the fluorescent lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced along the corridor. When he reached the elevator, he found Greg standing there, visibly shaken. "The elevator is stuck," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's someone inside." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. The first hint of the unexplainable was subtle, yet it hung heavy in the air. Ryan peered into the partially opened doors of the elevator, where a thick darkness seemed to pulse, almost alive. The faint sound of breathing escaped from within, sending a shiver through him. As Ryan tried to maintain his composure, Greg's expression was one of sheer terror. Before Ryan could voice his doubts about a malfunction, laughter echoed from the depths of the elevator shaft, a sound that didn't belong in a corporate office at this hour. The tension escalated like the elevator itself, spiraling toward a breaking point. Ryan stepped closer, trying to catch a glimpse of whoever or whatever was trapped inside. The laughter ceased abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence, and the air thickened with dread. Suddenly, the elevator's buttons began to flicker erratically, illuminating the non-existent 13th floor. As if in a trance, Ryan reached for his radio, but the doors slammed shut with a resounding bang, nearly catching his fingers. The elevator began to ascend, lights extinguished, leaving only the faint glow of the button panel. Panic surged through him, but the instinct to find out what lay within propelled him forward. The climax unfolded in the control room, where they watched the elevator's journey on the security monitors. The screen revealed a scene that defied logic. The elevator stopped at a floor that didn't exist. Just then, the doors opened to reveal a dark interior, and for a fleeting moment, a tall, gaunt figure stood with its back turned. The camera blinked out, leaving them in a suffocating darkness. When the elevator finally returned to the ground, it was empty, leaving Ryan and Greg with an unsettling mystery they could never unravel. Then there was Jessica, a 22-year-old delivery driver navigating the labyrinthine streets of Brooklyn. One rainy night, she arrived at a dilapidated building, the kind that bore the weight of forgotten stories. The air was thick with the musty scent of decay, and the dim glow of the hallway lights cast a ghostly pallor on everything they touched. "Take the service elevator," the portly doorman instructed, his voice low and gravelly. "The main one's out of order." Jessica stepped into the service elevator, her heart pounding as she pressed the button for the 8th floor. The cabin creaked and groaned, as if it were protesting this late-night excursion. With each passing floor, a sense of foreboding settled over her. By the time the elevator halted at the 5th floor, the air thickened with an inexplicable chill. The door opened to a void of darkness. Nobody was there. Something was off. Jessica could feel it in her bones. As the door lingered open, she felt a strange sensation wash over her, as if an unseen presence had slipped past her. The doors finally closed, but not before a rancid odor of mold filled her senses, suffocating her with dread. Then, without warning, The lights flickered and extinguished, plunging her into darkness. As she fumbled for her phone, a scratching sound echoed from behind, like elongated claws dragging across metal. When the light flickered back to life, she caught a glimpse of a woman in the mirror, her hair disheveled, eyes devoid of life. The elevator lurched downward as a sense of helplessness enveloped her. It descended into the bowels of the building, past the ground floor, into a damp cellar where she heard footsteps approaching. She screamed, pounding on the panel, praying for escape. And finally, there was David, a rideshare driver in the rain-soaked streets of Seattle. On a dismal night at the end of 2020, he picked up a passenger from a nondescript hotel. The man requested to be dropped off at a residential building, asking David to wait while he fetched something from his apartment on the 6th floor. "Use the elevator," he insisted, his voice oddly insistent. As David stepped into the small, antiquated elevator, he felt a strange sense of foreboding. The ride seemed uneventful until the elevator halted unexpectedly at the 3rd floor, doors creaking as they opened to an empty hallway. The button for the 6th floor remained illuminated, and as the doors began to close, he sensed movement behind him. A faint sound of footsteps. Arriving on the 6th floor, David found the corridor eerily silent, the air thick with anticipation. After waiting far too long, he returned to the elevator, only to find it acting strangely. It began to rise instead of descending. When it opened again, he was met with darkness on the 10th floor. Then, the atmosphere shifted. A cold breeze swept through the cabin, and the lights flickered ominously. David felt an overwhelming presence beside him, as if someone was standing too close. Suddenly, the elevator plummeted, and the lights extinguished, leaving him feeling crushed against the wall. When it finally stopped, he bolted out, only to see his passenger standing at the entrance, grinning with eyes that were entirely black. And so, as night falls, something inexplicable brews within the confines of these elevators, waiting to ensnare the unwary. What lies beyond those doors, in the dim light and silence? What will it take for one to confront the darkness lurking just beneath the surface? Curious yet? The stories of Ryan, Jessica, and David are just the beginning of a chilling exploration that will leave you questioning your next elevator ride. As the eerie silence of the elevator echoed in their minds, Ryan, Greg, Jessica, and David found themselves unwittingly intertwined in a web of unsettling experiences, each tainted by the supernatural forces lurking just out of sight. Each character navigated their own labyrinth of fear and uncertainty, but the threads of their stories began to weave together, hinting at a larger, more sinister design. Ryan, still reeling from the inexplicable events of that night, returned to the security office after the elevator incident with Greg. The oppressive weight of what he had witnessed gnawed at him. He had seen that figure, tall and gaunt, with an aura of dread that seemed to seep into the very walls of the building. The laughter that echoed in the shaft haunted him, a siren call to the depths of the unknown. As he sat in front of the monitors, replaying the footage in his mind, he felt a presence beside him. It was Maria, the building's janitor, an elderly woman with a knowing gaze and a habit of appearing when least expected. "Did you see it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, yet laden with urgency. "It's been a long time since anyone has disturbed the silence of this place." Ryan looked up, startled. "You know about it?" Maria nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting a depth of sorrow. "This building has secrets, child. It has always drawn the lost and the broken. You must be careful. It feeds on fear." His heart raced as he processed her words. "What do you mean?" "Those who enter the elevator may find themselves in places beyond their understanding. It can take you to the past, the future, or places that don't exist at all." Maria's voice trembled with the weight of her knowledge. "It is not just a machine, it is a vessel of sorts." Meanwhile, Jessica's experience in the decrepit service elevator had left her shaken. After narrowly escaping whatever presence had lurked behind her, she reached her delivery destination. But the unease clung to her like a shadow. The rancid odor and the scratching sound haunted her thoughts. As she stood outside the building, drenched from the relentless rain, she spotted a figure standing under the flickering streetlight. It was the doorman, his face shrouded in the dim light. "Did you deliver the package?" he asked, an unsettling smile breaking across his face. "Yeah," she replied, her voice shaky. "But something was off in that building. I felt something." The doorman's smile faded, replaced by a grim expression. "You're not the first to say that. Many have felt the pull of that place. It has a way of reaching into your mind, manifesting your fears." Jessica swallowed hard, her pulse racing. "What do you mean? What happens to those who get trapped in there?" "There's no telling," he replied, his voice low. "Some come out changed. Others never come out at all. You're a brave one, but bravery can be a double-edged sword." In Seattle, David's encounter with the passenger still lingered in his mind. The man's unsettling grin and black eyes echoed in his thoughts as he drove through the rain-soaked streets. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, an instinct that had always served him well as a rideshare driver. After dropping the passenger off, he parked a few blocks away, his mind racing with questions. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through the local news, hoping to distract himself. An article caught his eye. Mysterious elevator incidents reported in the city. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end as he read about a series of strange occurrences involving elevators, people disappearing, strange figures seen inside, and bizarre laughter echoing in the shafts. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from a number he didn't recognize. "You should be careful, David. The elevators are not what they seem. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th Street. I have information you need." The message sent a jolt of anxiety through him. Who could this be? Why did they know his name? Against his better judgment, he decided to go, hoping to find answers. As the three of them navigated their individual predicaments, the emotional undercurrents of their experiences began to intertwine. Ryan grappled with the fear of the unknown, haunted by the laughter that echoed in his ears. Jessica fought against the suffocating dread that accompanied her every step, the memory of the woman in the mirror weighing heavily on her mind. David battled the paranoia that crept in, unsure whether he was truly safe or if something sinister was following him. Their paths were about to converge, drawn together by the very forces that sought to ensnare them. As Ryan continued to sift through the security footage, Jessica found herself seeking solace in a support group for those who had experienced trauma, hoping to share her story and find some semblance of understanding. Meanwhile, David sat in the dim coffee shop, his heart pounding as he awaited the mysterious informant. The tension heightened as they faced their first real challenges, the rational explanations for their experiences beginning to unravel. Ryan's skepticism faded as the inexplicable continued to unfold before him. Jessica's attempts to articulate her fear met with disbelief and skepticism from others, pushing her deeper into isolation. David's unease grew as he realized he was being drawn into something much larger than himself, something that could consume him whole. Finally, at the coffee shop, David's informant arrived, a woman in her 30s with a haunted look in her eyes and a hurried demeanor. "You're in danger," she said abruptly, glancing around as if expecting someone to follow her. "The elevators are connected, they're gateways, and they're hungry." "Hungry?" David asked, confusion mingling with fear. "They feed off your fear, your pain. I've seen it happen to others, people who thought they were safe. You have to warn the others." Her eyes darted toward the door, and for a moment David thought he saw a shadow pass by outside, a figure lurking just beyond the glass. At that moment, as the worlds of Ryan, Jessica, and David began to converge, They each felt the pull of their experiences, the threads of fear and mystery intertwining. The next chapter of their unsettling journey awaited, and they were about to uncover the chilling truth behind the elevators that connected their fates, an exploration that would challenge their very understanding of reality and plunge them into a darkness they could never have anticipated. As the clock ticked forward and the night deepened, they would soon discover that the greatest horrors lay not just in the shadows of the elevators, but within themselves, waiting to emerge. And the question remained, would they confront their fears, or would they allow the darkness to consume them? The answers awaited just beyond the thresholds of the elevators, beckoning them into the unknown. As the clock ticked forward, the atmosphere in the coffee shop thickened with tension. David's mind raced with the woman's ominous words. He couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows around them were closing in, and the memories of the elevator, of the man with the unsettling grin, rushed back like a tide. The flickering fluorescent lights overhead seemed to echo the chaos in his mind, each flicker a reminder of the uncertainty that had begun to permeate his reality. "Who are you?" David finally managed to ask, his voice barely steady. "Why are you warning me?" "I'm someone who survived," she replied, her voice a mix of urgency and fear. "But survival comes at a cost. The elevators, they're conduits. They draw upon the fears and traumas of those who use them, feeding on the darkness hidden within. I was one of the lucky ones. I escaped, but I still feel its pull." David leaned in closer, captivated, yet terrified. "What do you mean by pull? What does it want?" "The building is alive in a sense," she said, her eyes darting around the room. "It knows us. It knows our secrets, our regrets. The more you resist, the stronger its grip becomes. I thought I could forget, but I can feel it trying to reach me again." As her words sank in, David felt a chill creep up his spine. The notion that the building was aware of them, that it could reach into their minds and exploit their weaknesses, twisted something deep within him. He thought of the passenger he had driven, the way the man had seemed to leer at him, reflecting a darkness that David himself had buried long ago. "Do you know what happened to those who went missing?" he pressed, desperation lacing his question. The woman hesitated, her fingers trembling around her coffee cup. They were consumed. Each one was drawn into their own fears, their own pasts. The building uses them to lure others in. You must not let it take you. You have to warn the others before it's too late. Just then, the door swung open and Ryan entered the coffee shop, drenched and breathless. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on David. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived as he noticed the intensity of the conversation. "What's going on?" he asked, concern etched across his features. Before David could respond, the woman shot up from her chair, her face pale. "You have to leave. It's here." The tension crackled in the air as the door swung open again. In walked Jessica, her face streaked with rain, eyes wide and terrified. I saw something outside, a figure. It was watching me," she gasped, her voice trembling. All three of them stood frozen in the center of the coffee shop, their hearts pounding, a shared understanding dawning upon them. They were no longer just individuals facing their own fears. They were now entangled in something much larger, something that sought to consume them all. In that moment, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness for a heartbeat before returning. David could have sworn he saw a shadowy figure slip past the window, a fleeting glimpse of something that shouldn't be there. His breath quickened. "What do we do?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "We need to confront it," the woman insisted. "We can't run. That's exactly what it wants. We have to go back to the building. We have to face what we're afraid of." Jessica shook her head vehemently. "No, I barely escaped last time. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't just in my head. It was real." Maybe it's time we confront the reality of our pasts, Ryan interjected, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. Oh, what if the building is drawing on our own fears and regrets? We can't let it control us. As they debated, David felt a tremor of recognition at Ryan's words. Each of them carried their own burdens, secrets that had been buried but were now clawing their way to the surface. He thought of his troubled childhood, of the moments that left him feeling inadequate, unworthy. A darkness he had long thought forgotten danced at the edges of his mind. "I'm not going back in there," Jessica said, her voice shaking. "I can't. I won't." "Maybe it's time you face what you've been running from," David said gently, surprising even himself. "We all have our demons. Maybe confronting them is the only way we'll get out of this." The woman nodded, her eyes fierce. "Exactly. The more you resist, the more it feeds on your fear. But if we stand together, we can break the cycle. We can take back the power." Reluctantly, Jessica looked between the three of them. "You really think we can just face it? What if we don't come back?" Ryan stepped forward, determination in his eyes. "We have to try. We owe it to ourselves, to the people who have already been lost." With a collective breath, they made their decision. They would return to the building, confront the darkness, and face the shadows of their pasts. But as they exited the coffee shop, an unsettling feeling lingered in the air, a whisper of doubt that crept into their minds. As they approached the ominous building, the rain intensified, pouring down in sheets, turning the streets into rivers of uncertainty. The flickering streetlights cast long shadows, and the air thickened with the weight of unspoken fears. Each step toward the entrance felt like a descent into madness. Inside, the familiar scent of dampness and decay enveloped them. The elevator loomed before them, its doors slightly ajar, as if inviting them in. Ryan hesitated, memories of the figure and the laughter flooding his mind. "Are we really ready for this?" he asked, doubt creeping into his voice. "Ready or not, we have to go," David replied, steeling himself. "We can't let it win." One by one, they stepped inside the elevator, the doors sliding shut with a finality that sent chills down their spines. The darkness closed in around them, and they felt the familiar pull, the sensation of being drawn into something beyond their understanding. As the elevator descended, time and space warped around them. The walls pulsed and flickered, and the air crackled with energy. David felt the pressure build in his chest, memories surging to the forefront of his mind, moments of childhood trauma, loss, and regret that he had long buried. Ryan's face twisted in anguish as he confronted the shadows of his past, while Jessica gasped as the haunting images of the woman in the mirror flooded back to her. Suddenly, the elevator lurched to a stop and the doors creaked open. They stood on a floor that felt alien, yet familiar, bathed in an eerie glow. Before them lay a twisted version of the building's interior, a nightmarish reflection of their fears. As they stepped out into the surreal landscape, a chilling laugh echoed through the air, a sound that was both mocking and inviting. It was then that they realized they were not alone. The shadows shifted, and figures began to emerge, dark reflections of their own insecurities and pain. Each figure was a manifestation of their deepest fears, haunting reminders of what they had tried to escape. Amidst the chaos, David felt a surge of clarity. "This is what it wants," he shouted, his voice cutting through the darkness. "It's trying to break us down by showing us our fears. We have to unite against it." With newfound resolve, they turned to face the figures that loomed before them, each an embodiment of their pain. Together they stepped forward, ready to confront the darkness, determined to reclaim the power that had been stolen from them. But just as they prepared to fight, the ground trembled beneath them, and a new presence emerged, an entity that seemed to feed off their fear and despair, a manifestation of the building's insatiable hunger. It was a creature of shadows, a swirling mass of darkness that whispered their secrets back to them, taunting them with the very traumas they had worked so hard to forget. "Welcome back," it hissed, its voice a cacophony of their own fears. "You cannot escape me. You are forever entwined with your past." As the entity lunged toward them, a rush of adrenaline surged through their veins. In that moment, they realized the true nature of their fight. This was not just a battle against the building or its dark forces, but a confrontation with their own histories, their own fears. With hearts pounding and minds focused, they prepared to face the shadows, not only for themselves, but for those who had come before them, those who had been consumed by the darkness. They would not let fear win, and in that realization lay the true power. A power that would not only challenge the very fabric of the building, but also reshape their destinies forever. As they braced for the impending clash, they understood that the journey was just beginning. The shadows of their pasts would rise against them, but together they would forge a path through the darkness. The answers awaited, and they were ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The shadows rippled around them like tendrils of smoke, and the air thickened with a palpable sense of dread. David's heart raced as he and his companions stood their ground, facing the swirling mass of darkness that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It whispered their secrets, taunting them with the very traumas they thought they had buried. "Together," David urged, his voice steady despite the tremor of fear coursing through him. "We can't let it divide us." Jessica, trembling, clutched Ryan's arm as if he were a lifeline. "What if it's too strong? What if we can't fight it?" The panic in her voice was unmistakable, and David could see the shadows of her past flickering in her eyes, images of betrayal, guilt, and haunting memories that threatened to overwhelm her. Ryan squeezed her shoulder reassuringly, his own face a mask of concentration. "We can't think like that. We have to channel our strength not just for ourselves, but for everyone who's been lost in this place." He turned to David, determination etched in his features. "You're right. We can't let it break us apart. We have to face it together." The entity that loomed before them seemed to sense the wavering resolve among the group, morphing and twisting in the air, feeding off their uncertainty. "You think you can fight me?" it hissed, its voice a dissonant symphony of their own fears. "You are nothing but shadows of your former selves. Look at you. You're already fractured." David felt a surge of anger rise within him, mingling with the fear. "That's not true," he shouted, stepping forward defiantly. "We're more than our fears. We're here, and we're not backing down." The creature recoiled slightly, as if stung by his words, but its form quickly reconstituted, darker and more menacing than before. "Then let's see what you're made of," it snarled, and with a sudden rush, it lunged toward them, tendrils of darkness reaching out like claws. In that moment, time slowed. David could feel the weight of his childhood pressing down on him, the loneliness, the feeling of inadequacy, the moments when he had felt utterly powerless. He could see Jessica's pain, the betrayal that had shattered her trust, and Ryan's struggle with guilt over a past mistake he had never forgiven himself for. But this was the moment they had prepared for. They could either succumb to the darkness or rise against it. "Focus on what binds us," David shouted, his voice rising above the cacophony of whispers. "Our shared experiences, our strength. We're not alone in this." Jessica inhaled sharply, her eyes widening with realization. "Together," she echoed, her voice stronger now. "We have to remember who we are, not what we fear." The creature hesitated as they began to link hands, a circle of defiance forming amidst the chaos. As their fingers intertwined, a surge of energy pulsed through them, a warmth that began to push back against the shadows. Ryan closed his eyes, summoning memories of friendship and laughter, the moments that had brought them together. "We're more than what we've faced," he said, his voice steady. "We are resilient. We are brave." The shadows recoiled, sensing their unity as a threat. "You think this will save you?" it thundered, the very air vibrating with its anger. "You are weak. You will succumb to your fears." But David felt a change stirring within him. The darkness was powerful, yes, but it was also desperate. They had the key to its weakness, togetherness, and acceptance. As they stood resolutely against the creeping shadows, David's heart began to race with a new kind of determination. "We have faced our fears before," he said, his voice gaining strength, "and we can do it again. We can face our pasts, our regrets, head on. We won't be defined by them." The creature howled in rage, its form shifting wildly, but David could see cracks beginning to form in its dark exterior. It was losing its grip, losing its power. Suddenly, a memory surged within David, a moment from his childhood that had haunted him. The day his father had left, the feeling of abandonment that had clung to him like a shadow. "I'm not afraid anymore," he shouted, channeling the pain into his voice. "You have no power over me." The air around them shimmered, and the shadows began to writhe, their shapes contorting as if caught in a tempest. Jessica squeezed David's hand tighter, her own fears rising to the surface. But this time, they weren't just shadows. They were memories of strength and resilience. "I'm not afraid of you," she yelled, her voice cutting through the darkness. "You don't own me." Ryan joined in, his voice a powerful chorus. "Together we are stronger. We choose to stand against you." As they spoke, the shadows began to dissipate, and the swirling darkness lost its tangible form, revealing the flickering light that lay beneath. David could see the fear and regret transforming into something else, something brighter and filled with hope. But just then, the ground beneath them shook violently, and the entity let out a deafening roar. It lunged again, a final desperate attempt to reclaim its hold over them. The floor trembled, and David felt the air grow heavy, thick with the weight of their fears. "Don't let go!" he shouted, feeling the energy of their connection rise to an almost palpable force. "We can break this!" And in that moment, as the shadows surged toward them, they focused on the light they had ignited within, the bond that had formed through their shared experiences. With a final collective shout, they pushed back against the darkness, channeling their fears into energy, their unity amplifying their strength. The shadows shattered, a brilliant light exploding forth and illuminating the room around them. David shielded his eyes, but he felt a rush of warmth, a sense of freedom as the darkness dissolved into nothingness. When the light faded, they found themselves standing once more in the eerie glow of the building's twisted interior. The entity had vanished, leaving behind only the echo of its disdain. But something else remained, a sense of clarity and resolve, a newfound understanding of their pasts that would no longer bind them. Breathless and disoriented, they looked at each other, the weight of what they had just faced settling in. David felt a mix of triumph and vulnerability, the realization that their journey was far from over. "We won this battle," he said, voice shaky but steady. "But it's not over yet." Jessica nodded, her expression resolute. "We have to find out what this place truly is, why it's pulling us in. There has to be a reason." Ryan stepped forward, determination blazing in his eyes. "And there may be others, people still trapped in their fears. We have to help them." As they stood together, united in purpose, David felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. They were no longer just individuals facing their own demons. They were a team, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. With hearts pounding and determination fueling their steps, they ventured deeper into the building, ready to uncover its secrets, prepared to face whatever darkness awaited them. The air crackled with energy, and as they moved forward, David could sense that the true mystery was only just beginning to unfold. With each step, they delved deeper into the unknown, the shadows of their pasts behind them, but still echoing in their hearts. And together, They would unravel the truth of the building, the darkness that had once threatened to consume them, and their own intertwined destinies. As David, Jessica, and Ryan ventured deeper into the building, the air grew thick with anticipation and the remnants of their recent battle against the shadows. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, echoing their footsteps and amplifying the tension that hung in the air. David's heart raced, not just from the remnants of fear, but from a burgeoning sense of purpose. The darkness had been defeated, but what lay ahead was still shrouded in mystery. "Stay close," David instructed, his voice firm. The corridors twisted and turned, each corner revealing more unsettling features, flickering lights, strange symbols etched into the walls, and the faint sound of whispers that seemed to beckon them forward. He could feel Jessica's unease beside him, her fingers twitching as if eager to grasp hold of something solid, something reassuring. Ryan, however, walked with a newfound confidence, his eyes scanning the surroundings as if searching for answers. "There has to be something here that explains all of this," he said, his determination palpable. Suddenly, a door at the end of the corridor creaked open, revealing a room bathed in a dim, ethereal glow. David exchanged glances with Jessica and Ryan, a silent agreement passing between them. They stepped into the room, which felt like a sanctuary amidst the chaos. Yet David sensed that it was anything but safe. Inside, the walls were covered with intricate murals, depicting scenes of people trapped in despair, their faces twisted in agony. It was as if the very essence of their fears had been captured and immortalized on the walls. David felt a chill run down his spine. This was no ordinary building. It was a repository of pain, a place where the shadows thrived on the suffering of others. "Look at this," Jessica whispered, pointing to a figure in one of the murals that bore a striking resemblance to her. "It's me, but trapped. How is this possible?" David stepped closer, his breath hitching as he examined the mural. "It's not just you, it's all of us," he murmured, his gaze drawn to another figure that mirrored Ryan's expression of guilt. "It's like this place knows our deepest fears." As if summoned by their thoughts, the shadows began to stretch and curl around the edges of the room, pooling in the corners with an ominous presence. David could feel the air grow colder, the atmosphere thickening, as the whispers transformed into a cacophony of voices, his voice, Jessica's voice, Ryan's voice, all distorted and echoing with pain. "Why are you here?" a voice boomed, reverberating off the walls. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in darkness, its face obscured, but its presence commanding. It was the embodiment of all their fears, a sinister entity that thrived on their emotional turmoil. David stepped forward, summoning every ounce of courage within him. "We are here to confront you. We know you feed on our fears, but we won't let you control us anymore." The figure laughed, a sound that chilled David to the bone. "You think mere words can defeat me? You are nothing but broken pieces, remnants of who you used to be. You will never escape the darkness within." Jessica, emboldened by David's defiance, stepped beside him. "But we're not broken. We've faced our shadows, and we've come together. You can't undermine our strength anymore." Ryan clenched his fists, his voice rising. "You may have taken our pasts, but you will not take our futures. We choose to stand together, united against you." The entity's form flickered, momentarily losing its composure as their words resonated through the room. "Foolish children," it hissed, its voice laced with venom. "You don't understand the depths of your own despair. I am the manifestation of every pain, every regret you've ever felt. You cannot escape me." As it spoke, tendrils of darkness lunged toward them, weaving through the air like snakes. David felt a surge of panic but fought against it. "Remember what we fought against," he urged, looking to Jessica and Ryan. "We've already beaten the shadows once. We can do it again." In that instant, the shadows coiled around David's legs, pulling him down, threatening to drag him into the abyss. He struggled against them, feeling their icy grip tightening. But in the depths of his mind, a flicker of light ignited, a memory of laughter, of friendship, of moments that had defined him beyond his fears. "Don't let it take you," Jessica cried, reaching for him, her hand outstretched. "We're with you, David. You're not alone." Ryan's voice cut through the darkness, strong and unwavering. "Focus on the light. Focus on each other." David locked eyes with his friends, and the connection surged between them, a tether of hope anchoring him to the present. "I won't give in," he shouted, channeling every ounce of strength he had. "Together we can break this." As he spoke, the darkness surrounding him began to waver, and the tendrils slackened their grip. With a mighty cry, David pulled himself upright, breaking free from the shadows. He felt the warmth of Jessica's hand clasping his, and Ryan's presence beside him ignited a fire in his heart. The entity, sensing their renewed strength, recoiled in fury. "You think you can defy me? I will show you the true depths of your despair." But David stood firm, bolstered by the unwavering support of his friends. "No, we refuse to let you control us any longer. We are not defined by our fears or our pasts." The shadows writhed violently, a storm of darkness swirling around them, but David felt the light within him growing stronger, fueled by their unity. "We are more than our shadows," he declared, voice ringing with conviction. "We are resilient, we are brave, together we are unstoppable." With those words, a blinding light erupted from their joined hands, illuminating the room and forcing the darkness to retreat. The entity howled in rage, its form fracturing as the light consumed it, revealing the tortured souls trapped within its grasp. Suddenly, the oppressive weight of despair lifted and the shadows dissipated, leaving behind a radiant glow. David, Jessica, and Ryan stood at the center of the room, breathing heavily as the remnants of their fears melted away. But as the echoes of their confrontation began to fade, a new presence emerged from the shadows, an apparition of a woman, her expression sorrowful yet hopeful. With an ethereal glow, she stepped forward, her voice gentle yet filled with authority. "You have faced your fears and emerged victorious. But the battle is not yet over. There are others who still suffer, and the darkness will return if you do not act." David felt a chill run down his spine. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am a guide for those who have been lost in their despair," she explained, her eyes reflecting the light that surrounded them. "There are souls trapped within these walls, just as you once were. They need your help to find their way back to the light." Jessica stepped forward, her expression resolute. "We'll help them. We won't let this darkness continue to thrive." Ryan nodded, determination etched across his face. "We'll find a way to free them no matter what it takes." The apparition smiled, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Then your journey has just begun. The path ahead will be fraught with challenges, but together you possess the strength to confront the darkness and guide others to safety." As they absorbed her words, David felt the weight of responsibility settle upon him. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger, but now they had a new mission, a purpose that extended beyond themselves. With renewed resolve, they prepared to delve deeper into the building, ready to uncover its secrets and confront the darkness that lingered within. The air crackled with energy, and as they stepped forward, they knew that their journey into the unknown would reveal not just the truth of the building, but also the depths of their own strength and resilience. Together, they would unravel the mysteries that lay ahead. Together, they would face whatever darkness awaited them. And together, they would guide the lost souls back into the light. As the blinding light began to fade, David, Jessica, and Ryan stood amidst the remnants of their confrontation, their hearts pounding in unison. The room, once a dark prison of despair, now glimmered with the soft glow of hope. Yet the air remained thick with an unshakable tension. Each of them bore the marks of the battle, not just physical, but emotional scars that would linger long after the shadows had retreated. David could feel the ache in his muscles, a reminder of the struggle against the entity that had tried to consume them. He glanced at his friends, noting the sweat glistening on Jessica's brow and the way Ryan's hands trembled slightly, the adrenaline still coursing through their veins. They had triumphed, yet the victory felt bittersweet, as if the shadows still lingered just beyond the corners of their minds. "Are you two all right?" David asked, his voice a mix of concern and resolve. He needed to ensure they were okay. They had all faced their fears together, and he could feel the bond between them strengthening even as their individual vulnerabilities surfaced. Jessica nodded, though her expression betrayed a flicker of doubt. "I think so, but I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over, that we've only scratched the surface." She shivered involuntarily, as if the memory of the shadows still clung to her skin. Ryan shifted, his gaze fixed on the remnants of light illuminating the room. "We've defeated the darkness here, but there's still so much we don't understand. This place, it feels alive, like it's watching us." His voice was steady, but David could sense the underlying fear that threaded through it. The apparition, still present, observed them with a knowing gaze. "You have faced the darkness within and emerged, but there are many layers to this existence. The shadows you encountered are but a reflection of the pain that exists in the hearts of others. The journey you've begun will lead you to those who are still lost." David felt a surge of determination. "Then we'll find them. We'll help them just like we helped ourselves." But even as he spoke, a knot of anxiety tightened in his chest. How many were trapped? How deep did the darkness go? The apparition smiled gently, her form shimmering like a mirage. "Your hearts are strong, but beware. The shadows are not only drawn to despair, they can also feed on hope. Trust in each other, for the path ahead will test your resolve in ways you cannot yet imagine." With those words, the apparition began to fade, leaving behind a lingering warmth that seemed to pulse in the air. As she disappeared, David felt a sense of loss, as if a guiding light had dimmed. He turned to Jessica and Ryan, sensing the shift in their dynamics, a newfound understanding that was both comforting and unsettling. "Let's gather ourselves," he said, trying to restore a sense of normalcy. "We need to plan our next steps. This place still holds secrets and we can't turn back now." Jessica took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing with determination. "What do you think we'll find next? Do you think there are more of those murals, more people trapped in their own shadows?" Ryan frowned, rubbing the back of his neck as he contemplated the question. "I don't know, but if this place is a repository of fear, there's bound to be more. We need to be ready for whatever we encounter." There was a newfound intensity in his voice, a fierce resolve that David hadn't sensed before. As they began to navigate deeper into the building, the atmosphere shifted, the air growing heavier with each step. The walls were adorned with more murals, each depicting scenes of struggle and anguish. David felt the weight of each painted face, their eyes pleading for release, mirroring the turmoil that still flickered within him. "Look," Jessica said, her voice barely above a whisper. She pointed to a mural that depicted three figures huddled together, their faces obscured by shadow. "It's us, but darker. What does this mean?" David's heart sank as he examined the mural closely. "It's as if the shadows are gaining strength from our fears. We need to remember who we are, who we've become." But even as he spoke, he felt a flicker of doubt. What if they weren't as strong as they believed? What if the shadows found a way to exploit their vulnerabilities? Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the halls, shaking the ground beneath their feet. David stumbled, catching himself against the wall. "What was that?" he asked, anxiety creeping back into his voice. Ryan's eyes widened as he scanned the corridor. "I don't know, but it can't be good. We should keep moving." He stepped forward, his bravado masking the fear that flickered behind his eyes. As they pressed on, each corner they turned seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of the building, where the shadows grew darker and the whispers more pronounced. David could feel the weight of their journey pressing down on him, a constant reminder of the emotional toll they had already endured. "Do you think we're being watched?" Jessica's voice trembled slightly, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her earlier confidence. "It feels like the walls are closing in on us." "We need to stay focused," Ryan said, his voice firm. "If we let our fears take control, we'll end up just like those in the murals. We can't afford to lose sight of who we are." But David could see the cracks forming in their unity, the tension building as the darkness threatened to seep into their minds. He felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him, the responsibility of keeping their spirits high while grappling with his own insecurities. As they reached the end of a corridor, they stumbled into a vast chamber, the ceiling stretching high above them. The walls were lined with mirrors, each one reflecting distorted images of themselves, twisted and warped by the darkness. David's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight. "Is this another trap?" Jessica whispered, her voice echoing in the vast space. "Are we meant to confront our reflections?" "I think we have to," Ryan replied, stepping forward cautiously. "If these mirrors show our fears, then we need to face them head on." David nodded, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "We've come this far. We can't turn back now." But as he approached one of the mirrors, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Would they truly be able to confront the shadows that lurked within them? Suddenly, the mirrors began to ripple, the reflections shifting and merging into one another. David's heart raced as he caught a glimpse of his own fear, a vision of failure, of being unable to protect his friends, of losing them to the darkness. He could feel the panic rising within him. But then he remembered their moments of laughter, of strength, of unity. "Focus on the light," he shouted, rallying his friends. "Remember who we are." Jessica and Ryan stepped beside him, their hands clasped together, and as they formed a circle in front of the mirror, the darkness began to recede, revealing their true selves, strong, united, and resilient. But as the light grew brighter, David noticed something in the corner of his eye, a shadow lurking behind the mirrors, watching them intently, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The realization sent a shiver down his spine. The darkness wasn't gone, it was merely biding its time. "Stay alert," David warned, his heart pounding. "We're not alone here." As they stood together, a sense of foreboding settled in the air. The battle against their fears was far from over, and the shadows were still a very real threat. With a newfound sense of purpose, they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, knowing their journey was only just beginning. And as they stepped away from the mirrors, determined to uncover the next layer of the building's mysteries, David couldn't shake the feeling that more challenges awaited them. Challenges that would test not only their strength, but their very bond of friendship. With every step they took, the echoes of their past whispered behind them, a reminder of the battles they had fought and the scars they had earned. But they pressed on, united in their resolve, ready to confront the darkness that still loomed in the shadows. Whatever awaited them next, they would face it together, forging their path toward the light, determined to guide others out of the darkness that had once threatened to consume them. The promise of discovery hung in the air, and as they ventured deeper into the unknown, David felt a glimmer of hope flicker within him, a sign that perhaps, just perhaps, they could illuminate the way for others who were still lost. The journey continued, and with it, new mysteries beckoned on the horizon. As they moved deeper into the building, the shadows seemed to pulse around them, alive with anticipation. David, Jessica and Ryan pressed on, their hearts pounding in synchrony with the faint echoes of their own fears. The air grew thicker, and each step felt weighted with the knowledge that they were not just confronting external darkness, but the internal shadows that threatened their very souls. "Do you think there are more people trapped in here?" Jessica asked, her voice barely above a whisper, each word hanging heavy in the air. "What if we find someone who can't escape?" "We will," Ryan said, his tone steady, but David could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "We have to believe that there are others who need our help. That's why we're here." As they traversed the labyrinth of mirrors, David's mind raced with the implications of Ryan's words. They were embarking on a mission, but what if they were not strong enough? What if the shadows found a way to exploit their weaknesses? The thought gnawed at him, but he quickly suppressed it. They had faced darkness before, and they could do it again. Suddenly, a distant wailing sound echoed through the chamber, freezing them in their tracks. The noise sent chills down Jessica's spine, and she instinctively reached for David's hand. "What was that?" "Let's find out," David replied, masking his own apprehension with a facade of bravery. They followed the sound, each step echoing louder than the last, as the wailing morphed into a cacophony of anguished cries that reverberated off the walls. As they reached the source, they found themselves in a vast, dimly lit room. The walls were adorned with more murals, but these were different. They depicted scenes of loss, despair, and hopelessness. In the center of the room, a swirling vortex of shadows spun, pulsing with an ominous energy. Within its depths, David could make out fleeting images of people, faces twisted in fear, hands reaching out in desperation. Those are the souls trapped here," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling. "They're calling for help." David felt his heart race. "We can't leave them behind. We have to try to save them." But as he stepped closer, the vortex seemed to sense their presence. The shadows surged, and the anguished cries intensified, a cacophony that threatened to overwhelm them. David felt the pull of the darkness, a seductive whisper promising power, if only he would surrender. "No!" he shouted, forcing himself to resist. "We're not here to be consumed." But the shadows were relentless. They reached out, wrapping around Ryan and Jessica, drawing them toward the vortex. Panic surged through David as he fought to pull them back. "Hold on!" he cried, grasping their hands tightly. "Don't let it take you!" In that moment, the bond between them shimmered with a fragile light, pushing back against the darkness. David could feel their shared strength, their determination to fight, and it ignited a fire within him. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for everyone who had ever been lost to despair. The vortex roared, angry at their defiance, and with a sudden surge it unleashed a wave of shadows that crashed against them like a raging storm. David closed his eyes, feeling the darkness threaten to engulf him, but in that moment he remembered the apparition's words, "Trust in each other." "Together!" David shouted, and he felt his friends squeeze his hands tighter. The warmth of their unity became a shield against the encroaching shadows. In a burst of light, they unleashed their shared strength, pushing back against the darkness. The vortex shrieked, and the shadows began to unravel. David felt the energy shift, the cries of the trapped souls transforming into a chorus of hope as the vortex dissipated. In its place lay a radiant light, illuminating the room and revealing the faces of those who had been lost. They were no longer twisted by fear. Instead, they appeared serene, freed from their torment. One by one, the souls stepped forward, gratitude shining in their eyes as they reached toward David, Jessica, and Ryan. "Thank you," they murmured in unison, their voices a gentle whisper that filled the air with warmth. But as the last of the shadows dissipated, a lingering coldness enveloped the trio. David felt a shiver race down his spine. The darkness had not been vanquished. It had merely retreated, regrouping for another assault. "What now?" Jessica breathed, her eyes wide with fear and determination. "We keep going," Ryan said, his voice firm. "There's still more to uncover. We've only just begun." The shadows were still watching, lurking at the edges of their resolve. David realized that this journey was far from over, that they were still being tested, still being drawn deeper into the heart of the darkness. And with every step they took, they would face new challenges, new fears, and the ever-looming possibility of succumbing to despair. As they turned to leave the chamber, the echoes of the past whispered through the corridors, reminding them of the battles fought and the scars earned. Yet amidst the uncertainty, David felt a flicker of hope, a belief that together they could illuminate the path for others still lost in the shadows. With each stride they took, the promise of discovery loomed ahead, beckoning them toward the unknown. The darkness may have retreated, but it remained a constant presence, a reminder of the battles yet to come. In that moment, the trio understood that their journey would never truly end. It would be a continuous cycle of facing fears, confronting darkness, and seeking out the light. They would remain united, determined to help others find their way, even as the shadows threatened to pull them back. As they ventured forward, the weight of the world felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The future lay before them, an open expanse filled with possibilities. And though they could not predict what awaited them, they knew one thing for certain: they would face it together, no matter the cost. And as they stepped deeper into the unknown, the shadows whispered promises of challenges, yet unseen, their presence a constant reminder that while they had triumphed today, the battle against the darkness was far from over. Would they emerge victorious again, or would they find themselves consumed by the very shadows they fought to conquer? The answers lay ahead, shrouded in mystery, waiting to be discovered.